What's going on, guys? My name is Jake,
I'm Jesus.
and this is your Body Comp Prescription, where we help you navigate through all things health and fitness. Hope you're all having a great day. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow us on Instagram at bodycomprx. Now, the other day, I came across a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast, actually. So if you're a fan of that podcast, maybe you know what I'm talking about. But it was actually a video. It was like a clip that was shortened into a video on YouTube titled "How to Work Out Smarter." Have you seen this? Have you heard of this, Jesus?
Yeah, I believe it's when he was talking about like how to work smarter, not harder, and he goes on a tangent about this, something like that.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan basically had a guest on named Faraz Zahabi. I don't expect anyone to know who that is because I didn't know who that was before watching that clip. But basically, he's an MMA coach. He's a grappling coach. He works with like George St. Pierre, if you know who, or worked previously with George St. Pierre and stuff like that. So he has this philosophy.
I'm a big believer in never being sore. You should train, and the next day you should wake up feeling good.
You should never be sore. You should always wake up the next day feeling good, right? Jesus, right off the bat, what's your take on this?
I want to clarify. Was that Joe Rogan that said that?
No. That was Faraz Zahabi. That was the
trainer. The
that.
trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. My initial reaction to that is, the whole purpose of training and the whole process of muscle building and muscle breakdown, you do build up that lactic acid, and therefore you do build up that muscle soreness. Muscle soreness isn't always necessary, but it is something that is basically a part of the process, and it happens naturally. You can't really avoid it, and you shouldn't really avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it before on the episode about recovery. I think that was like episode 5 or something a little while ago, right? That, soreness isn't exactly a requirement following training. It's like it's not needed. But soreness doesn't also indicate a good workout either. So like there's kind of like that gray area where it's like soreness can be good, but too much soreness is bad, and not being sore is like, did you do enough? And it's kind of like there's mixed opinions on that. But what about never being sore? Is that too far?
I mean, never being sore, I guess to play devil's advocate, if he's talking about like maybe if someone was working on his like the grappling, right? They're sparring with someone and they're not sore because they've done it for many years. So, doing like 30-minute session isn't gonna obviously tire you out. But if you wake up the next day from your main event, your main fight, and you're not sore, I don't know how that's possible. And if it is, I want them to like say more.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if I don't think he was speaking specifically about like the event, because I'll go into it in a little bit where he talks about like intensity and stuff like that. But what I found interesting is that he said that this goes for everyone, because Joe Rogan immediately said, like, how is this possible? How can you like train and not be sore? How can you avoid? Is this for like experienced lifters? And he goes, it's for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're new to the gym, first day in the gym, or if you've been training forever. And I thought that was really interesting, because I think, one, people who are really new to the gym are very prone to being sore.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then people who are more experienced, hopefully if they, have a goal in mind, all that kind of stuff, and they are more knowledgeable about how to have better workouts and stuff, I think soreness is almost like a given. I think soreness is something that's kind of hard to avoid regardless of what like experience level you have. Do you think that plays a difference? Because I thought that was interesting when he said it doesn't matter how much experience you had.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a little difference, because obviously, like you said, if it's your first day at the gym, for the next week, you're gonna be on your couch or your bed, and you're just not gonna be able to move, right? Whatever body part you're doing. And then when you do build up experience, I think you still get sore. I think you kind of get like used to it, and your body kind of like recognizes this feeling that it almost becomes normal to you, where it doesn't really affect you, and you don't really like, you notice it maybe, but sometimes you could still get through. Like right now, I want to use myself for example. My back is still a little sore from like a workout I had a few days ago, but I don't notice it, right? Like, but when I'm starting to move my back and my shoulders, I'm like, oh wow, like yeah, I guess I am still sore. But it's just something I don't really realize on like a day-to-day basis, because I've been doing it for a while.
Just like a tolerance.
Yeah, like a tolerance, exactly.
Yeah. Well, his example that he gives, right, is I have the transcript pulled up here so that way I don't like misquote anything. He says that if the maximum amount of pull-ups that you can do is 10, and you couldn't do 11, even if I pointed a gun to your head, you couldn't do it. As a trainer, I wouldn't make you do 10, sorry. I would make you do 5 because I'm setting you up to train the next day. We're going to do 5 until 5 becomes easy, and then we'll move to 6 and so on. So let's put it further into example. He does this, right? He says, if we can both do 10 pull-ups, right? You do 10 pull-ups all in one sitting on Monday, right? And you're sore for the rest of the week. I can do 10 pull-ups, but I only do 5. But I do 5 every single day. That means at the end of the week, assuming we're not, training on the weekends or something, at the end of the week, you've done 10 pull-ups, I've done 25 pull-ups. And this is the angle that he takes throughout the whole thing is I've done more volume than you. I've done more work than you, right? And now initially, I feel like this sounds like a really good argument. It's like, oh, well, yeah, like if I've done more than double the volume that you have, it might be a little bit hard to argue that my progress might be better than yours.
Yeah.
But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I have an issue with what he's preaching, right? He's talking about volume, right? And throughout the whole argument, he's talking about how volume is greater than intensity. Okay, so we have, for those of you that don't know, we have these things called training principles, right? And this is more of an exercise science, kinesiology kind of thing. So we have frequency, intensity, time, type, volume, progressive overload. You might have heard of some of them, but those are all of them. And what Firas Sahabi is saying is that volume is the most important. And he's saying that intensity shouldn't matter because you can only do intensity once in a while, right? Like you can't go hard every single day because then it's truly not going hard, right? That's just your intensity level, your normal intensity level. So that's what he's arguing, right? What do you think the most important training principle is, in your opinion?
My opinion, I think I would say progressive overload, right? Continuing to, because just kind of give a quick example. And, if you could go to the gym every single day for like the next 3 months, but if you're not, increasing your weight progressively, you might not make gains at all, right? You make little gains, but not as much as you would. So in my opinion, I would say progressive overload is the number one.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, I think, I'm not completely sure, but I'm sure there were teachers of ours that said that progressive overload is the most important. And I don't know if that's why, but I think personally, because I don't know that, I do think progressive overload is the most important variable because especially when it comes to training, because there's so many variables within that, right? If you don't know what progressive overload is, it's basically just changing any variable in training in order to, account for the adaptations that you've made from like maybe previous training sessions, right? Or progress that you've made from previous training sessions, right? And that could be sets, reps, weight, rest time under tension. There's tons of things, right? And that's what I think progressive overload is definitely the most important because in longevity, like there's no other way to measure if you've actually done anything if you're not changing any variables, right?
Yeah.
But I think he was really close. I think Firas Sahabi was really close with this thought process, right? I think he's a really smart guy. Like you if you listen to the episode and listen to the way he speaks, he knows what he's talking about. I don't know if he's like a certified like trainer or has a degree in anything or anything like that. But I think the one thing you have to keep in mind is that he is an MMA coach, right? Not necessarily a personal trainer or, a bachelor's in exercise science or master's or anything like that. So I think he took some of the knowledge and he picked the one that was most relevant to his sport, right? And, he's only looking through one lens because when you open the conversation up past MMA, like it makes perfect sense for MMA because it's like, oh, you want to go more rounds. If I do more rounds than you over the year, that means I have more experience, and that gives me an edge over competition and stuff like that. But and that's where the whole not being sore benefits come into play. If you're not sore, you can work more, right? But this doesn't apply to what a lot of us are trying to do, right? Like, especially here on our channel, right? Or our podcast, right? This doesn't apply to muscle building because we've talked about recovery before and we understand that it takes time to do that. And a lot of us are trying to build muscle, right? And, Jesus, if I asked if you wanted to get bigger biceps, should you be training them every day?
No, you should not be training them every day. It's definitely something, just like you said, the goal is different for the people he's training versus if he was training me. For me, it would be building up my strength and building up my muscles, right? It's not to work on like necessarily my endurance and making sure I'm able to constantly have that consistent power and strength. Because if you look at MMA, that's what it is. It's being able to, at a moment's instance, just provide all that power to push someone down, get yourself up, hurt someone. The goal is completely different.
Yeah, like if you can curl 30-pound dumbbells for 10 reps, that doesn't mean you should be curling 15s for 10 reps just because you want to train biceps the next day. The way that muscles work, they're not like that, especially when it comes to muscle building, right? I think he made a mistake when he was talking about pull-ups, right? Because like that starts tying over into our area of expertise, and that's a little bit more about what we talk about, right? That's more resistance training kind of stuff, and it doesn't necessarily translate. And another reason I wanted to talk about this is because it's a really well-known video. It's a very well-known clip.
Yeah.
Like when I came across it, it had already had like 11 million views on it, and it there's several different versions of it, and that doesn't even include the people that listen to the actual podcast when it came out a couple years back, I guess. But I think what he's doing is better for muscle efficiency, and not necessarily when it comes to muscle growth, right? Because again, for MMA fighters, muscle efficiency is good. But, putting on tons of muscle mass is not exactly their goal, But Jesus, you have any like closing comments in regards to anything like soreness, training frequency, progressive overload, anything we talked about?
Yeah, I wanted to, just talk about and say that everything we're mentioning, I think we're saying that what he's saying, it is accurate, but take that with a grain of salt because what he's training for is completely different. Everyone's goals are different. I think some individuals would like to have the strength and the power. Others would like to basically be able to apply that and maybe work on their endurance. So I think the example he was saying with the pull-ups, it was a good example, but that's more someone where, his fighters that he's training, they're already, they already have the strength. They're just working on their endurance because a lot of the times these fights, that's what they end up being is endurance because, when you're wrestling with someone, 1 minute sounds like the fastest minute of your life, but it's actually the longest minute of your life when you're actually wrestling, right? On the other hand, for people like us, when we're trying to build strength, that goes back to our original episode. If you haven't seen our principles of training video and all the other videos where we talked about these principles, you want to be, when you're building strength, you want to train a muscle group and be able to recover so then you could train. If it's the next week for you, that's the next week. If it's 4 or 5 days down the line, that's 4 or 5 days down the line, right? But being able to train those muscles and each time increasing the intensity by or progressive overload by increasing the intensity, adding more weight to every single rep and set you do, that all is very beneficial. So I think where he's saying that, you shouldn't be sore, it's kind of like, well, if you're trying to build muscle, you have to be sore. There's no way around that. Sure, you could take like an Advil to like reduce the soreness, but you're still sore. So there's really no cheat or like way around it. It's just kind of like understanding your goals and understanding that what you're going through is going to make you go through that muscle soreness.
Yeah, and again, volume is important. You know, he basically preaches volume over everything. Now, volume is important, but it isn't the most important for what a lot of us try to do here. I know for Jesus and I know for a lot of you that listen, it's not exactly the most important. Like we said, I think progressive overload is definitely the one that you should be focusing on, because at the end of the day, you've probably heard this before, but your body is smart, right? And if it understands that you're going to do the same exact job every single day, it's just going to find ways to be more efficient, right? To get the job done, right? It doesn't look, if you know that you're going to do the same thing every day, you're not going to exactly use your lats when you do a pull-up. You might use your forearms because you might grip harder. You might use your teres, all that kind of stuff. You're going to use a lot of other muscles that may not normally be involved to get the job done, just because you know that you got to do it, right? And that's why progressive overload is a little bit more of a more importance, because you have to give your muscle reasons to grow, aka changing your sets, reps, weight, all those things that we talked about, right? But I think that just about wraps it up for today's episode. I'll link the video down in the description if you guys are interested in listening or watching for yourselves. We've been wanting to talk about some more training principles for a while now, and I think that this topic was a good way to kind of introduce it to our podcast. But if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. Feel free to let us know. Send us a DM. Even if you disagree, we'd love to continue the conversation with you guys. But thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. And until next time, guys. Peace.
Peace.